there's one term that we've heard so often in the last 6 months, it's resilience. And I have an entrepreneur with me who knows a thing or two about resilience because he learned how to run his business and sustain when they almost ran out of cash a few years ago. So I'm sure coping with the pandemic it shouldn't be too difficult for Kunal Bahl, the founder and CEO of Snapdeal. Thank you so much, Kunal. It's amazing what you've managed to do with Snapdeal, the turnaround story that you've scripted in the last few years by focusing on the value commerce segment as opposed to what the others are chasing. Thank you very much for talking to ET Now. In the last few weeks, we've heard about every player, every e-commerce company talking about this accelerated shift to digital, how buying online has seen a huge surge. Take us through what you've seen on your platform. Have you seen a huge surge in the number of sellers, in the number of shipments, transactions? How have the last few months really reshaped things for Snapdeal, for the e-commerce industry at large?
Firstly, Chandra, it's great to see you and I hope you're staying safe. And thanks for having me on the show after many years, I think. And look, it is an interesting period. We are seeing a transformation like none of us have seen before. I think a lot has been said about the transformation that is being led by the large companies, large enterprises with their own digital transformations. However, I think what is not often spoken about is the transformation we are seeing amongst the medium and small enterprises and the micro enterprises of India. I think that's where the big tectonic shift is happening. And this will have lasting, enduring benefits for the MSME segment and for our economy in general. Because I think the MSMEs are finally realizing that there is a duality in this world. There is this physical world and then there is this virtual world. And they need to traverse both seamlessly to ensure that they grow their businesses and also save those businesses from existential risk like the pandemic has created. And what we've seen is pretty considerable increase in number of first-time buyers, particularly from small towns. Over the last 3 months, we've seen over 5 million first-time buyers who've come online and transacted on our platform. Nearly like 90-95% of them come from very small towns, right? Definitely outside of the top 20-30 cities that we would all know of in regular course. And I think that's very, very encouraging because we've realized that given the supply chains were so significantly disrupted during this period, the only place that the consumers could shop was online. And while things have opened up now, thanks to all the unlock initiatives that the government's been leading, however, there is some amount of a behavioral shift that we believe will be permanent in nature. Alongside that, we've seen on the supply side about 10,000 new sellers who've come on board just in the last 3 months. These are all medium and small enterprises who have never sold online before and are realizing that selling online is a great way for them to grow their business, not only during this pandemic period, but perpetually going into the future as well. So both on the demand and supply side, we've seen a significant shift happen in recent times.
Right. Kunal, I read a couple of months ago that Snapdeal is now profitable at company level. Can you give us a sense of your own unit economics, the daily shipment volumes, GMV, some of these metrics that will help us to understand where Snapdeal is?
Yeah, so I think in the last 12 months, we had about 30 million unique customers who transacted on Snapdeal, which is a pretty sizable number if you think about it. That's 2% of India transacted on Snapdeal over the last 12 months. And this is while we being very focused on ensuring that the economics of the business are great. I think at any economics, you could have theoretically the entire nation transact with you. However, it is, I think the cumbersome task or the Herculean task is how do you ensure that you are able to make money on everything you sell while having a sizable number of consumers transact on the platform. So we are encouraged by the traction on the platform while continuing to stick to our focus of ensuring that we have positive unit economics. we over the last 1 year and even through this year, we will make significant investments to enhance our customer and seller experience. And while those may show up as significant one-time expenses, we feel those are the right investments to make for the long
Right.
run. And these could be investments in supply chain. These could be investments in increasing the seller network. These could be investments in technology. So we want to traverse this delicate balance of ensuring that on a unit economics level, we are always positive. However, if there are one-time investments that we need to make for the long-term benefit of experience of our buyers and sellers, we're not shying away from those as well. And we have the balance sheet strength to do that. So I think there's always a delicate balance one has to strike between unit economics and investments into the future.
Right. Kunal, how are you going to fund these investments? Because I remember, the 2014, 2015 phase where you were this hyper-funded, largely funded unicorn, and then the 2017, 2018 phase where you just cut down burn, I think, by 95%, you divested assets to get things back in shape. So how are you going to fund these investments going forward? And there are also reports that Snapdeal might consider going public. Take us through some of these plans.
Sure. Look, we have cash on the balance sheet. So while we haven't had the need to raise capital, we have cash on the balance sheet, and we are a fairly capital efficient company. In the last 1 year, the per employee revenue of our company was somewhere in the 1.2 crore revenue per employee, which is, I would argue, of global standards, right? So we are incredibly capital efficient while having sizable revenues and sizable scale. But we have cash on the balance sheet, given our burn is very, very low or minimal. We believe that for certain one-time investments, looking into the future, we should be open-minded.
Right. And your approach too has been different. I mean, you've been emphasizing in the last few years that you will focus on value commerce, on getting in more players from the smaller towns in India to sell on your platform. You've consciously stayed away from grocery again, a space that everybody is chasing these days. So tell us, about this and your focus areas going forward.
Sure. So I think the focus areas of our business are just three, right? It's very simple. One is creating all the necessary capabilities to serve our customers and sellers, which would be investing in technology, growing the relevant assortment in the value segment, investing in supply chain, while ensuring that so that would be focus number one. Focus number two would be do number one while ensuring that we are able to generate positive unit economics on everything we sell. It's very simple. It's not that complicated. That if you sell goods worth 100 rupees, you should make more than you should make enough margin on those to pay for your fixed variable expenses that go into serving those customers. And the third is keeping our fixed operating costs very low. So I think it's just a combination of just being very, very focused and disciplined on the overall fixed and variable economics of the business while ensuring that we are serving the needs of our customers. Now, I think the question to ask is, why are we so focused on this value segment? Our view is that not only due to the pandemic, but even before that, there is an accelerated transition of the offline bazaars to online, to the online world. And this actually acceleration started post-Geo, not only because of the pandemic. So it has been in progress for, I would argue, 3+ years now. And post 2017, when we made some shift in our strategy, we realized that this is where we have a kernel already in the company. A lot of our customers already associate us with value. Now let's build on this kernel. And that's what we did over the last 3 years with a lot of focus and discipline. And that has played out quite well for us, where we now have very clear demonstration of experience and capabilities relevant to the shoppers in the value segment. And the value segment is actually much larger than the branded segment. I think us city folk always feel that most of the world is buying Nikes and Reeboks and similar brands, but most of India is buying regional brands, right? Brands that most people would not have heard about, and that market is about three times larger than the recognizable national and international brands, about $160 billion market, which is barely online. So today it may seem like a small segment online, but if I were to fast forward 5, 10 years, that's going to make up for most of the Indian e-commerce market.
Right. And do you have plans of going public anytime soon?
I think I expected you would ask the question. Look, I think we've been very focused on building the right business, right? I think going public requires a few ingredients. The ingredients being uh, having high degree of predictability in the business, right? E-commerce businesses by design are slightly volatile businesses, especially in India, where you're at least right now you have lockdowns, you have floods somewhere, etc., which are unfortunate events. But volatile businesses don't make for good public companies, right? So we want to make sure that we are over the next year, 2 years, making sure that we have all kinds of predictability of levers of growth built into the business. I think at that point in time we would consider going public, but there's no rush at our end.
Right. And Kunal, if I look at the e-commerce landscape today, the entry of Geo has kind of completely changed things. They've raised so much money within the span of a few months. You have Geo versus Amazon versus Walmart versus Snapdeal. So where do you see yourself in the new scheme of things? Where do you place Snapdeal in this new competitive landscape?
See, if you start with the size of the retail market is about 800 billion to $1 trillion a year in India. Of that, grocery is about half, right? That's a space we are not focused on because we believe that it is hard for us to stick to our principles of generating positive unit economics in the grocery segment. Doesn't mean that the grocery segment is a bad segment. It's a good segment, but it requires tremendous amount of capital expenditure for many years that we do not want to do. We'd rather spend our capital, our energy on winning the value segment where we already have a lot of traction and scale. Now, out of the remaining, let's say, retail segment beyond grocery, about 220 billion is non-food, right? Of which about 50 billion is branded and like branded products, let's call them international and national branded products, and about 160 billion is what we call regional brands or local brands. We want to play in that 160 billion, and we are very clear. We are okay to not play in the branded segment. We are okay to not play in the grocery segment. We feel 160 billion is a large enough market to play in and can support multiple players, not just us. We obviously want to be a significant part of that segment, which we already are. But we want to just be focused on what we are good at.
Right. And coming to the final part of the interview, Kunal, you're also the head of CII's e-commerce committee for this year, and there's been so much on the regulatory front. You recently had the country of origin labels getting implemented. You also had customers who could now escalate their grievances with commerce platforms. But one of the most anticipated policies is the e-commerce policy. A draft has been going around in WhatsApp groups for many weeks now. Where do things stand? And multinational companies have already expressed reservations at some of the provisions in this draft. So, where do you see this heading? Will there be more emphasis on data localization? Will it benefit Indian companies?
Yeah, I think broadly it seems to me the objective of the e-commerce policy is to promote a safe growth of our industry, right, by the government. I don't think there is any other objective from what I have learned from my interactions. I think, but it is premature to comment on what the e-commerce policy will eventually have or not have, because as you said, there have been multiple drafts that have been swirling around, and I have seen some, I have not seen some. It's hard to validate what is correct, what is not. But I think we should all be just a little patient and let the relevant government authorities do their work, and they will likely come up with a draft at some point for the consideration of the industry. And then at CII, as part of our committee, we will put our heads together and give the government our perspective as an industry on what that draft policy looks like. But needless to say, this is going to be an interesting next, let's say, 12 months from an e-commerce policy standpoint.
Right. And the other news from the regulatory front, of course, is the action that India has been taking on Chinese apps. I mean, this week you had another round of Chinese apps getting banned. What's your view on this? And I know you've been asked this question about Alibaba before, owning a less than 3% stake. Will you perhaps look at buying them out so that that question is not there at all going forward?
I think, look, I would leave that to the decision of the respective shareholders. I don't think it's really my decision as such. We as entrepreneurs, we build our businesses along the way. Investors, financial or strategic, approach us to want to be part of our journey. And if there is a meeting of minds at that point in time, we work together. So I don't think at the point of taking capital, anyone puts in any more thought into any of these things. But that said, I feel that, look, the government's obviously put in a lot of thought into doing this. It is an unprecedented decision. We've not seen this happen in many parts of the world. But I trust that the government's considered many factors and taken this decision, and we are supportive of that. What decisions the government takes in the future of a similar nature, I am not aware of. But I do feel that this has opened up an opportunity, no doubt, for Indian startups. And I think what you would have heard from many of the smaller upcoming entrepreneurs is that it does open opportunities for them in areas of gaming, content,
right.
Tools that earlier were completely, Indian companies are completely absent from that. So rather than debating whether it should have happened, whether it should not have happened, it has happened now. I think we should be thinking about what opportunities does this present for our ecosystem, and are we as an ecosystem taking advantage of the vacuum that's been created?
Right. Kunal, you've been one entrepreneur who's sort of paid it forward, to the ecosystem. You've been a prolific investor in startups. But one thing that people often talk about is how there is a paucity of domestic capital in the Indian ecosystem. We spoke to a few weeks ago. He said there are trillions of wealth in private hands that don't get deployed. Corporations who have billions of cash on their balance sheet perhaps spend now because they are seeing this digitization happening, this accelerated shift happening. What is your own view, and are there exciting models that you're seeing right now when you look at the startup universe?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest privileges I've had along with my co-founder Rohit is to, over the last 8-9 years, support many dozens and dozens of startup companies which have gone on to become large businesses like Ola or Urban Clap or Shadowfax or many others, Razorpay, that we've been seed investors in. We do benefit a little bit. We have an unfair advantage where entrepreneurs want to work with us because we are also entrepreneurs. But it's great for us because we also learn a lot in the process, build a sense of community, and as you said, pay it forward. When we were starting our company, there was no one we could go to for angel investment or in India at least, or mentorship. And at least we want to change that in whatever way we can. So I think it's a great privilege, and I think we will absolutely continue to do that going into the future. Now, the question about why not enough domestic capital has come in from, let's say, more traditionally wealthy HNIs or institutions or corporate treasuries into the sector, there are a few reasons. One, traditionally, not enough companies have demonstrated a profitability, a
Correct.
path to profitability that is believable. And no, India has yet not created many large, successful public companies. We obviously have Make My Trip, InfoEdge, India Mart, a few. But compared to the number of private companies, the number of public companies is just a negligible percentage. I think the confidence level of the domestic investor will increase substantially about investing in private companies in the tech space once more companies go public. There are, however, some regulatory aspects that, if the government took note, could accelerate this. For instance, today, the tax rate, the long term capital gains tax rate on unlisted companies is twice that of listed companies. So, a domestic investor who's assessing whether he should put 100 rupees into public markets or a private company that he truly believes in is going to factor in the fact that it's a 2x long term capital gains tax that they have to pay. So I think there are some of those aspects that can further accelerate the adoption of investing in private tech companies by domestic investors. That said, I feel the big shift here we will see only when we see a lot of successful IPOs from tech companies in India. After
Right.
that, there will be no stopping. Also,
Hopefully, Snapdeal will be one of them, Kunal.
hopefully.
But on that note, thank you very much for talking to ET Now. Stay safe and take care. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chandra. Great talking to you. Thanks a lot.